You really can't stop the car, you can't stop the business, right? But you do have to try to, fix that tire, because if you don't, you can't pick up any more speed. That all goes back to helping them create systems around their business and helping them step away from the roles that are just taking away their time and not really making them profitable. It's a process of education. Are you invisible to your audience? Is your business a needle in a haystack? If you're looking for somebody who's already established that's going to be able to pay for your services, that means they're already doing okay, but
Yeah.
they just can't break that plateau. They just can't break through to that next level. Yeah, so I mean, like, what I'm saying is, it seems to me like you guys are helping him create systems, so systematizing his business, which is something that a lot of businesses are lacking. They lack the organization and they lack the systems in place to actually scale their businesses, right? Because you can't really scale if you don't have systems. You have to have systems in place, repeatable systems in place that you can use over and over again to grow your business. And I think a lot of businesses don't know how to do that.
Well, there's also sort of a combination of the retaliation of time, right, and energy. Because I think there's so much energy, and this is what I've been trying to talk to him about specifically, which is that our biggest win with him, and he doesn't really get it, and I don't think anybody gets it, is to bring energy back to him, because he's not fooling around multiplying multiple things that don't need to happen, because we've taken him out of these resource intensive, I would say, circular patterns, because to me, I look at it and I go, why are you doing this? What is the point, right? So you see the same thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you're doing
Yeah.
the physical shoveling. I mean, you're in there with a shovel and picking away at putting the production into place to solve these sort of one by one challenges. For an architect side, what I see is that in a lot of businesses, as you mentioned, it's not just the fact that they don't know how to systematize. It's that they're doing so many rudimentary tasks that take energy out of their day, that it's almost as if you have so much energy during the day. You've got this like span of time that you can put into your efforts to
Right.
grow and scale your business. But then what you're doing is that unless you get out of that function, that sort of role or that circle that's going around and around, unless you sort of go off of it, and this is the thing I think we're all trying to grab a hold with, especially with this particular client, is to say, look, we can continue. We don't need to stop the car. We can fix the tires while it's moving.
Right.
However, you have to let go of the wheel and let us drive and assume trust that we're going to go in the same direction just as fast, but it's going to be repaired. So I'm just curious on what your thoughts are on that sort of analogy.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Because obviously you really can't stop the car, you can't stop the business, right? But you do have to try to, fix that tire, because if you don't, you can't pick up any more speed, right? You can only go so far with a flat tire or a low tire, right? You can't go any faster until it's like ready to go. You got a gas, you know what I'm saying, and you're able to like keep going, because if you don't, then there's only so much speed you can pick up, and eventually, if you keep running a car with a flat tire, it's just going to destroy the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? The axles are going to break, and you're not going to be able to keep moving forward, and it's going to drag, and it's going to drag, and you're going to go even slower, right? Because you're trying to go fast with a broken system. And I think that happens to a lot of people, to be honest with you. I'm saying that because I work with a lot of businesses, and I see what they're doing and what they're trying to do, and that's like one of their major issues, is not having the systems in place. And like you said, like they're stuck doing repetitive shit that they're not supposed to be doing, that could be done a lot different, which will give them back their time and their energy to focus on something that actually is going to drive the needle forward, you know?
So from an architecture standpoint, I know we've been working with him to move all of the stuff away from Zoho and all the rest of the what I would consider like mechanical Turks that are stuck in like this almost embryonic level, like very basic beginner level stuff that was formulated by someone someplace or by himself, I don't know, at some point where it was like, okay, yeah, here's some basic stuff. When you look at this from a top level perspective, how do you look at it? Because I mean, you're seeing, because we've got, you know, inbound leads, we've got activity, we've got responses and communication, and now we're going into like the call center world where we're now looking at like what's the responses. Thoughts on that? Just like, where do you see the architecture?
As it is right now.
Well, no, sure. I mean, you could say that, but I'm more like where to go to get this to be, you know, optimized.
I mean, in particular for him, I think there were a lot of patch jobs that were done. You know what I mean? And I think it's a bit of a mess, and he has a lot of things that kind of work, but are not really working properly. They need to. As a matter of fact, on Monday, I'm gonna probably spend a good 3-4 hours just sorting through all of the things that they've made, right? Because basically, you know, Talon created a bunch of patches and a bunch of workflows, and when you I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, he did a really bad job. I'm just saying, like, when you don't have the experience of creating marketing automations and, you know, having the foresight to plan everything out first and then go in and actually create the things, when you create those workflows, they actually start to become a mess, right?
Oh yeah. Well,
and that's what he has going on right now. And so, like, on Monday, I'm going to spend about an hour with Talon going through the workflow so that he can explain to me what each workflow that he created is supposed to do, so then I can start to create solutions that are going to replace that and be more organized and actually work the way they're supposed to.
and so another question I would have, now that we see this development of clandestine ending, which is that it all works together, which is really what I think is the biggest problem, which is that there is no semblance of order. Because as you said, patch jobs mean that they weren't thought about from the top end, and we see this not only here but in other spots where it's not like you can build this enormous complex silo of things that can happen, but if it doesn't tie back to a central repository to switch tracks if you have to, and like I see this all the time when people start to spend their time worrying about all the little pieces that seem sort of articulate when you're doing it, but don't think about like what's the purpose.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's an issue. And I like it. For me, it's a lot more of a headache to go into an account like his that already has a big mess, you know what I'm saying? Then obviously to start fresh, it's a lot easier because we get to plan everything ahead of time and make everything work properly. And again, that's why on Monday I'm going to have a meeting with Talon first to have an explanation of all of the workflows he's built and what they're supposed to do. Right after that, I'm going to meet with Dr. Jones so that he can tell me what his mentality was behind each one of those workflows. That way I have the explanation from Talon and I have the expectations from Dr. Jones. Then I can go back and create all the mind maps that I need to create, you know what I mean, from top level view and down.
And do you think, from your perspective, just knowing where we're heading with this, because I think this is kind of appropriate for this discussion, from a modeling world, from a high level modeling and from a business flow model, Do you have an architecture that you and Aaron have thought about where this could be repeatable to some degree? To where, I mean, obviously it's very specific for him, but it seems like this is like his model. When I first spoke with him, and you have to remember how far back this goes to, how far he's come, right? So he was negative cash flow, negative profit, you know, treading water in a sea of sharks.
Right.
And, you know, I pulled him up, you know, and put him on the buoy and said, sit here for a second while I look at what's going on.
Yeah.
And when, after I got at least somewhat under the hood and said, okay, like he showed me the basic stuff, I go, okay, what I see right away is, you know, misaligned copy, poor calls to action, incomplete steps. Like the list went on forever, right? It was like literally like 20 things. And this is my version, not like when you get someone like you who's a mechanic to go, okay, great, that's good. I see that you know the windows are broken and the car's got a broken engine. Now we have to go in and change the the spark plugs and all that. Right.
Yeah.
So I understand because my variances go on basic understanding of like flow. Like I understand, okay, the customer comes in, what's the experience? What are we missing, right? And I can identify customer journey strategies and also just go and look at general copy and calls to action, all the things that you go, okay, like obviously someone built this that doesn't know what they're doing, which whatever purpose, it's at least it's something, and you're not completely
right.
But then it got into technology shifting, which is when we started to say, well, wait a minute here, like every time we run into X we run into Y, so we need to get rid of one of those two. You got to pick a technology shift because we can't get to X unless
So, you can't steer two cars at the same time.
Yeah, so once the technology shift was I guess committed to on his side, and it wasn't necessary. I still think we're in the process of committing, because we're still yesterday's
meeting was all about me, because what they're trying to do with Mighty Networks and move everybody over to Mighty Networks and do all of these other things. They are the things that he wants to happen would be very difficult if he's still doing Zoho billing instead of Go High Level billing. Because, for example, he wants it to be like, okay, I'm going to offer this free for 60 days, and if they don't pay, I want them kicked out of the group, right? And I'm like, okay, are you trying to do that manually? You want to do that one by one? He's like, no, I don't want to do that one by one. Okay, well then you're gonna have to move over to high level, because you can't. There's no way for us to tell the system like, hey, this person hasn't paid, unless we're billing through high level. You know what I mean? And so that's how we got his commitment to start to move all the products over to high level and start to build through high level instead of Zoho.
And that really makes you think, about revenue being generated now on high level, and from a purpose standpoint, there's a big question mark that now hits that radar screen, which is something that I had lots of discussions about at high levels event, which is that when you start running transactions through high level at a very sizable clip, like he's got a pretty big audience, and he could move over quite a bit of revenue into high level's production zone, right? So now if you're saying, hey, now you have to put membership models through this, right? Because it's going to attach itself, and that you can set up an easy trigger and it all sort of works, and when someone leaves then it triggers something. I get that. And you start thinking about the e-commerce side of where this ends up, right? Where because my big push with him has been, we're just starting this process of understanding why, when you put high level in the middle of this, that we can start the e-commerce structure, because there's another piece that will come, which will be inevitably the product sales through his channels. Meaning, hey, when you get to this level, you also get X product, which could be a, you know,
A shirt,
this, right?
yeah, supplement or something.
Sure. And that, so now you're getting, okay, this customer now has this. Then they go into a system with tagged product re-engagement, so that at the end of 30 days it says, hey, do you want that again?
Right.
And then now it's tied into the e-commerce system, so that you can see previous purchases and see some development of a lifetime value of that customer system, right? And so now, right, so I know why you're laughing, which is that it changes how you look at the business model of high level, as opposed to now what it is today, which we see, which is a CRM system. But what we're turning the dime on is to understand that this is becoming a financial system. And there's a lot of discussion around this, about how this is impacting and can impact people. And it really begs that connection that they were recently announced to Shopify, because now that you can tie together a Shopify production layer, even at its most rudimentary format, you begin to be able to really establish a much better structure around establishing footholds into customer predictability.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I'm getting ready to offer, which I'm looking for kind of like a guinea pig to test this with, is CDP. I don't know if you're familiar with CDP, but basically what it is, it's right now only like really big companies use it, because it's so expensive to use. But basically what it is you take customer interactions, have the AI build a profile for this particular customer, have it analyze everything, and send that client content based on his profile. Like, for example, if somebody goes to a website and they buy recyclable straws, right? The AI will take a look at that and say, okay, this person's probably environmentally conscious. This is how much they purchased. It'll probably last them about this long. Any marketing that we do to this person needs to be, environmentally friendly. It needs to be green. It automatically generates the content and sends the messaging out through high level via email and text messaging. Now, let's say you have a sales call with this person, right? The AI will listen to that phone call, okay? Take that context of the phone call into consideration, generate content based on that phone call, and send it out to that client. And so it starts to build a unique profile. So no text message, no email will ever be the same for two people. You know what I mean? Because it's going to generate content based on the uniqueness of that person's profile, based on the messages you've had, based on the conversations you've had, based on the purchases that they've made, based on any kind of interaction that they've ever had with you, your company. Their content will be generated uniquely for that particular person. And the cool thing about it is that the AI can go even further than that. So like, if you have a sales team, right, it can analyze all of your sales team's phone calls and make suggestions as to how they could have done better on that phone call, and even give them a score. And that way you'll know like who's your best salesperson, why are they your best salesperson, what do they do on phone calls that your other salespeople don't, and then at the same time retarget that person with emails and messages based on those phone calls and based on their interactions.
Is that directly being done through the interface with High Level's current regiment of AI, or is it installed?
No. This CDP is something that, like, like I said, right now CDP is very expensive to use because most companies have to build it from the bottom up, and it's very expensive to build. And like for example, have you heard of Silo? I don't know if you heard of Silo, but Silo is like a site for real estate people,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
so if you wanted to use CDP with them, just to allow the connection, not to give you any data, just to allow the pure connection, it's $500 a month, right? Um, they let you customize 3 or 4 different fields, and then you have to buy the data, which is like another, $6,000, $10,000 for the data. Um, the reason that it's going to be able to be more affordable is because what we're doing is that the technology has already been developed. Like I hooked up with this dude a while back, um, and right now we just need to beta test it. But basically, um, we're gonna take all the data inside of high level, right? It's like imagine high levels basically half of the system, right? Because we'll take all of their phone calls, all of their transactions, all of their text messages, all of that communication, build a profile, and the AI will create content and send it out on its own based on the profile it creates for each individual contact.
Interesting. So these CDPs, and I'm familiar generally with why. Again, that's why I was saying predictability is an important thing when you start working with a client, because you're trying to forward proof lifetime value with some advantages of using AI and obviously previous purchase history. But also, I would think in generally, what this allows someone to do is to look at also with the right type of customer to work with that would provide a better lifetime value in the future. So you can sort of segment your
Yeah,
market. Like,
yeah. You could actually definitely do that.
Yeah, because that to me is sort of validating some of the things that I was telling him, which is that you could go after the whole $29 market world if you want, but maybe right, because this is obviously something that anybody who's come to us wants to build a community is like, okay, let's just do $29 and get everybody in. I'm like, but why? Because what if we got in people who were like better soldiers for you that will listen to you and move up the value ladder chain faster?
Right.
And it's something that I think we don't talk a lot about these things because it's almost like it's too difficult for us to explain some of these things to people who are non-marketing people. To us, it makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
How are you getting today these types of customers to come? Because one of my biggest question marks is, let's say I went out and produced an ad and said, this is the type of customer we want, who is at a certain revenue level, like Dr. Dean is, and they're lost their way, let's just say. The best way to put
it. Right.
But there's a huge swing of opportunity, and we, of course, with him we saw negative profitability going to now almost 100,000 in positive profitability, and
that's
revenue from 100,000 to now 300,000. Right, so we know what the impacts are, and I say, okay, I'd love to help another client like that, but the question comes down to the validation around what we're doing is there. The process of how we do it is just a matter of time and architecture and strength. But what does this person who is out there seemingly searching for this, what and how convinces them or commits them to at least that first step? And that's what I've been trying to get my head around, is is it just a general longer term process of education that keeps being fed to them and retargeted and saying, hey, here's another thing we did, here's another thing, and then eventually there's a piece that says, oh yeah, that's the piece. And I'm trying to figure this out because I've thought about this in 13 ways, and I go, maybe it's just that's the thing, is that you have to have enough multiple problem solves that, you know, after the sixth time they see someone who's saying, hey, here's another chop at the tree where here's another thing we solved.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, even if you just solve one problem for them, which is like systematizing their business, or returning, systematizing their business could be the same thing as returning back their time, returning back their energy, giving them more time to focus, allowing them to grow. That all goes back to helping them create systems around their business, and helping them step away from the roles that are just taking away their time and not really making them profitable. I think it's a process of education, right? Of showing them all of the things that solving that problem can do for them. You know what I mean? Like saying, okay, like, do you have the right systems in place to grow? If you, or like, for example, a pain point, are you stuck doing, meaningless tasks that don't make you any money? This is why you need to stop doing them. And then the next time they see an ad from you, it's like, do you feel like you're always low on energy because you're doing X when you should be doing Y? You know what I'm saying? And then, this is how you solve that problem. And then after a certain amount of time, so the way that I normally handle those campaigns is we do what's called a level 1, level 2, and level 3 campaign. Level 1 campaign is education, right? Pain point solution, education. Level 2 is when we make level 2 is when we usually run like Facebook lead form campaigns that have a small ask, like a consultation or an analysis or a downloadable thing. Because in level 1, all we're doing is building an audience of people who will get to know you, like you, and trust you, obviously, right? We're building an audience with level 1. We're building an audience with level 2, which is where we're going to offer a downloadable thing, a lead magnet, a consultation to collect their name, phone number, and email. And then the level 3 campaign is when we're actually running the ask, like, hey man, buy my shit. You know what I'm saying? Buy the things that I have to sell, buy the solution that I have. But we're only running it to the people who have interacted with you at level 1 and level 2. We're not really running it to anybody that's cold. That's normally how we handle those campaigns.
100%. I mean, look, we've been doing this for how many years?
Yeah.
Right? I totally understand that model. I guess I was more asking, in this particular case, we've got a little bit more horsepower involved, And I'm just wondering, like, the higher horsepower level customer, what do they want? Like, because when I started with him, I started with a very basic, super basic conversation. Like, what are the problems that you have that we can solve? Because it wasn't this model. It was nothing to do with what we are doing today. It was just like,
right.
It was like, wait a minute, like, you need to like have a brand, like it started with like
well, because at that point it's just business consulting, isn't it? Like because people can't see what. Sometimes when people start a business, they're too focused and too invested into the business, and they don't have a bird's eye view. And so it takes a person coming in from the outside, and somebody with the experience that you have, right? That you've grown companies, you know what it takes, you know what it should look like, and kind of look at it and be like, oh, bro, come on, dog, you don't even have this in place. Like, what are you doing, right? And they might not be able to see that because they're so invested into, creating that company or doing the everyday tasks or being involved in actions that they shouldn't even be involved in, right? Uh, but they can't see that because they're down in the trenches and they don't have a plane to look at it from up top, right? And they might not and even if they did, they might not have the experience and the know-how to look. They might just look down and just and not be able to spot what they need to spot. And somebody like you comes in that already has the experience, that already has grown companies, that knows what it should look like, that knows that they should have a brand, that knows that they should be creating this type of content, that type of thing, and be like, listen, man, if you want to get to over here, you need to start taking these steps. You know what I mean? And I think at that point it becomes like business consulting.
Oh,
right?
100%. And I think what I was looking for is that, you see the bottom end of this result, which is that we started with basically like a real conversation around just easy sort of, hey, you gotta have a brand name for your business. Like you've gotta, like people don't recognize, if you're trying to become a national brand, which he was trying to, that you have to let go of like regionally based ideas, and like you have to now grip onto you as the brand and driving your behavior so that you are acting in a way that's more towards a global audience. And just to unwind that conversation was weeks, but it kind of, each piece unwound another facet, and then you get into the, well, how do we get rid of this constraint, and how do we get rid of this constraint? And now we're at the point where, like, how do we scale all these things after the constraints have been removed, or at least some of them? Anyways, no, this is good stuff. Kip, I didn't want to get this deep into it. I was actually just more curious about asking you about, you see all this stuff. So now what I want to do in November is run a campaign to go and approach similar customers to this, and to do what you just said, which is that, we need to run a 3-pronged campaign typically, which is what makes the most sense. And what develops their initial interest is what I was kind of looking at. And obviously, it could be as simple as just the consulting piece. I think there's more to it, though. I think it comes down to, one of the things that was what he was trying to do was to become visible. And, through various incantations of TikTok and YouTube and social media, and we helped him organize that and get through all the...
I think that even that right there that you just said is a perfect angle.
Yeah.
Are you invisible to your audience? Is your business a needle in a haystack? You know what I mean? That in and of itself could be a hook on one of the ads.
Well,
that could be something that triggers them to be like, well, shit, you know what? I don't have enough clients. I probably am invisible to my perfect avatar, to my customers.
Right, or are you losing to your competitors because you're not visible, and you're not providing value, and you're not providing, and maybe that's the better, are you concerned about lost clients because you're not producing? Because you're trying to attempt this month for November to do 1,000 pieces of content per month with our stuff, right? To get production up to a certain point where we can say, look, we could go to 1,000 pieces of content per month. All we need is, 3 solid videos a week, and we can do it if you want us to if you really want to get into now the social selling aspect. But I think what's more important is to tell a customer, like, don't waste your energy on these things.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's, I from what your original question was, is like, what's going to pique their interest? And I think it's, their interest is more business growth. You know what I mean? Especially somebody who's already at a certain level and they're trying to get to that next level, but they're just kind of stuck. They're stagnant. They don't know what are the next steps, or they don't know what's going to take them to that next level.
No.
You know what I mean? Because if you're looking for somebody who's already established, that's going to be able to pay for your services, that means they're already doing okay. but
Yeah.
they just can't break that plateau. They just can't break through to that next level. They just, they can't get to those 50,000 a month. They can't get to those 100,000 a month. They're stuck at 15 or 20, or you know what I mean, and they don't know what it's gonna take. Like they don't know what next steps to take. They're just too confused to know what they need to be doing in order to grow.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that you're working with us. And as I said before, I think we could do a lot of cool things if we wanted to, expand this relationship. So I'm always up for trying to collaborate, because I think because you've got a good front end dude who can stage this whole thing and push the narrative. I do think there's also room for network strategies here.
Yeah.
Where what I was talking to Aaron about yesterday, which is that imagine someone comes to us and says, hey, I'm like the painting dude, and I know all the painters in Florida or wherever, and like they all need this go high level thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you say, look, let's just split it. All you need to do is just go tell everybody that this is available. You can be the pitch man, and we'll split the revenue, and then we'll manage the SaaS for it. And then
right.
And so now you build a separate, agency install. It's now a SaaS model for painters in Florida, right? And there's 10,000 painters in Florida, and then the guy goes out and picks up 500 on SaaS, and he's getting half of 199, and he's basically making more money than he is on the painting that he's doing for his home thing, and he becomes like the painting guy, but you do all the work and you manage it and you own that SaaS for him,
right?
Which means that at the end of the day, you don't have to worry about it ever leaving. You only have to worry about revenue partnerships that maybe you divide and conquer, like building a brand with that person. I think that's where, the real opportunity within the SaaS framework is. I was just thinking about this the other day, B2B, because obviously, the thing we're doing is B2C. And I said,
right.
There's a lot of B2B stuff that people could pick up on. And I think you have to find a convert who's used high level and just loves it to death and has a network, and you say, well, why don't you just tell everybody that you use this and it works so well for you, and you don't have to do anything. You just send them a link and say, if you want to try it out, and then we'll put them on. You just get paid for your network. So I love that model, because it sort of supports the narrative around what we can do, which is we can build all the infrastructure.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yep, that would be good to find somebody like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe that's another way to put an advertisement out there to say, hey, we got to find a guinea pig, as you said, right? Who's interested in that, right?
Yeah.
So if you found, for example, CDP is a little bit more intensive because it involves someone who's got an existing, profile of clients that's got, recurring revenue on different potentially, built-in e-com products or built-in, previous purchases.
Yeah.
This is something where you find, hey, guy who has network, hey, here's your, way to monetize your network. And that could be in itself, if we found an example guinea pig. Like, I think we find example things like this. Like Dr. Jones, we can just turn around and push that out as a narrative, right? And say, hey, if you're this guy, like this guy, then here you go. And then we'll find another narrative where we build this, SaaS thing and say, okay, here's this guy. You want to be this guy, go get this stuff. So I think the narratives based on things that we've helped people build are the easiest ways to enter a market. And I think maybe that's the linchpin to think about, trying to identify like topics that validate someone's capability to maximize our skill sets without selling. Like, we don't need to sell, we just need to do,
Right.
Right. So
I mean, that's ideal. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why I was trying to get away from this idea, because I was part of the agency panel, at high level, and part of the conversation was about, horror stories dealing with clients, and this is like, well, that's because you're forcing every single one of these clients onto your platform with expectations and they're expecting X, Y, and Z, which rudimentarily, if there isn't like a partnership, it sucks because you're really just fighting an inevitable die, right? You get to a certain point where either you've produced that month or you haven't, and if you haven't, then you're gonna get cut. Like it's like a team thing. It's like, look, you were good last month, Mr. Ride. Another month that goes by, if I don't see the running back numbers coming up, I'm gonna go get another draft, right?
Yeah.
But if you're working with someone as a partnership, like I think like Dr. Jones looks at this as a partnership, because we're doing consulting with him, which is completely different than having a performance relationship. And that's why it works, right? Because he's not looking at us to say, hey, how many
how many leads, how many conversions, how many bookings, or shit like that.
No, he's looking at us saying, how can we make it better, faster, stronger? And that is a great relationship.
Yeah, and I think, of course, that is a great relationship. Your churn will be really low as well.
Yeah. So anyways, I'll let you go. I just wanted to bring up these things. I thought it was interesting because, after being a week at high level, there's so many different people doing so many different things. But there was a pattern where I said, the real thing is to get away from selling your story and getting into, hey, look at all the stuff we could do, and here's an example of what we did. Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
And it's not about, hey, I'll get you 60 customers in 60 days, right? Or I'll get you $50,000 of revenue in 12 months and your money back. It's, here's what we're doing. Do you want to do this?
Yeah. Those other ones suck, man. You know what I mean? This is much better.
Yeah, but that's the thing I kept running into, and I think the conditional formatting on also looking at how do you build affiliate commission was also the same thing, which was that this is what we did. You could do it too. Do you want to do this? And it's not about like, hey, you have to join my school group or you don't get your training, right? It's more like, this is what we're doing. If you want to follow along and work with us, then
come on with it.
Yeah,
jump on.
Learn from us. So it's a little bit different of a model, I think, that we've been used to in the agency world. Again, I'm still getting my head around it. I'm grappling with this every day about how do I do this, and it makes me perturbed to no end that I feel like we're going in slow motion. But I think that's sort of par for the course when you change gears, and I think I'm getting used to the 6-month run that has to happen to change gears when we go from an agency to this consulting / next level business.
Yeah.
It's double the amount of time I think it has taken, but I think it's getting there right now. So this.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you start something new, it's gonna take a lot of time, and then eventually you'll get that time back.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I said I probably will engage with you next week to get the ads up, because I'm going to get the full story from Dr. Dean on a podcast, so we can use that as the, hey, here's the story. If you want to listen to the story and you want to do what he's doing, then hit us up.
Get on it. Yeah.
It's not a sell. It's a, if you want to, we're not going to grab you by the bones and tell you have to get 50,000 next month. It's, here's what we did. You want to be part of this world and you want this, and you are this person. And that's a 4%. Like there's probably like 4% out of the audience that's ready to go, but the rest of them we're going to have to figure out what the secondary offers are. And that's what I'm working on this week.
Cool. All right, Mr. Matt.
Awesome, man.
Well, let me know whatever you need.
I appreciate it. Every time we talk, I feel a little bit more comfortable that I'm got someone in my corner who can help me execute too.
Good. Yeah, of course. We're here to help, man. Whatever you need, we got you.
You know it, brother. Thank you.
I'll see you.